This is a case that gives everyone who hears about it a headache. Anyone who comes to the bank to withdraw money and gets targeted by this criminal ends up with their head bashed in by a bricky. The perpetrator's strategy for each crime is to be quick, accurate, and ruthless, smashing a brick directly onto the back of the victim's head. Location: Zhejiang Province. In November 2022, Miss Wang went to an ATM to deposit the money. It was already late, and there were hardly any people on the street. While Miss Wang was focused on operating the machine, a man wearing a helmet slowly approached her. Without a word, he took out a brick and struck the back of Miss Wang's head. Miss Wang's head was hard, and after being hit several times by the helmeted man, she didn't pass out but fell to the ground. Then the helmeted man grabbed the San Jiubai yuan in cash and a ring from her hand. Throughout the ordeal, to avoid further harm, Ms. Wang did not resist. Once the helmeted man had walked away, Miss Wang quickly called the police. The police arrived at the scene, and through surveillance footage, determined that the suspect was not a first-time offender based on his method of attack. 5 days later, as the police had suspected, another man was attacked at the same ATM while withdrawing money. The following scene is quite terrifying. The footage shows this man talking on the phone as he approached the ATM to deposit money. At that moment, the suspect was already lurking behind him, possibly because he hadn't knocked out Ms. Wang with his previous attempt. He brought a larger brick this time. When he got behind the man, the helmeted assailant struck him with the brick, knocking him out. After grabbing Sushi-san, yuan and an iPhone, the helmeted man calmly searched the victim's body to ensure there was nothing valuable left before leaving the scene. From the surveillance footage and the method of attack, it was clear that the suspect who attacked Ms. Wang and this case's perpetrator were the same. The method of attack was extremely brutal, aiming directly for the back of the victim's head with a brick. Who could withstand that? If the helmeted man wasn't apprehended, soon who knows how many more would fall victim to his attacks. Despite the police deploying significant resources for the investigation, the helmeted man seemed to vanish into thin air, impossible to find. Had he left the area? Was he now committing crimes elsewhere? 9 days later, the helmeted man reappeared. Surveillance footage showed that as Mr. Yu was depositing money, the helmeted man targeted him from outside, waiting for the right moment. Seeing no one around, approached Mr. Yu from behind and struck his head. However, Mr. Yu's head was tough, and instead of being knocked out, he quickly turned and engaged in a struggle with the helmeted man. Realizing he was no match for Mr. Yu, the helmeted man fled. But he returned with the brick, only to find Mr. Yu had temporarily retreated. The helmeted man then entered the bank, took Mr. Yu's wallet, left beside the ATM, but as he exited, Mr. Yu charged back at him. Frightened, the helmeted man dropped the wallet and fled the scene. After the helmeted man escaped, Mr. Yu called the police. Patrol officers who had been combing the streets chased the assailant for several blocks and finally brought him to the police station. Through detailed investigation, the suspect, known as Brother Brick, was identified as Mr. Xu, a 60-year-old unmarried man. The reason he turned to crime was that his parents had passed away when he was young, and his own personality was very reclusive. Feeling hopeless, he chose robbery over starvation, having been in and out of prison since Izhou Jiulin for theft and robbery, spending most of his life behind bars. However, upon release, Mr. Xu did not reform. After being released in June of that year, he committed 4 attacks, stealing over Basha yuan in total. Ultimately, Mr. Xu was sentenced to 17 years in prison. If he behaves well in prison, he might be released early. Dear friends, please protect your head.